I mean, this fits very much in, like, on your website, you have, we create positive impact through co-creation and design thinking. So this fits very much into this mindset, right?
Yeah.
Like, instead of against it, to sit at the table all together and collaborate and co-create. So how do you think this adds values to the whole process?
Well, I think that's a really interesting question. So I think most people want a happy life without any tensions of feeling guilty or feeling that they should be doing something else, or the feeling that they're not taking responsibility for their own actions, or they're not using their own means in an optimal way. The challenge is that many people, from a professional point of view, don't really feel empowered or don't feel that they have any course of action available to them to be part of something positive. And I think that that's quite a fundamental design flaw, or something that we as a business community need to take care of, that there is room for dialogue, room for exploration, and room for collaboration to use the energy and the momentum that we've built up as entrepreneurs or as professionals and apply that towards progress. And so I think that is a really important topic, to find ways where we as professionals can and be great at our job and help our companies be prosperous, and at the same time be part of the solution rather than just part of the problem.
And one of the methods you use with your agency is design thinking, right?
Yeah.
Like, can you elaborate a little bit on this?
Yeah, so design thinking is a way of structuring a process so that you can apply creativity in a useful way, so to speak. So design thinking starts from a process of obviously doing some research and empathizing and understanding what's going on, and then formulating a very specific design question, which always starts with how might we da-da-da-da-da-da, and then attracting a variety of perspectives to creatively solve that or answer that question within the parameters that you've set. And so that's where co-creation comes in. So design thinking usually starts from a premise of divergent thinking and then convergent thinking. So first of all, you come up with many possible solutions, and then you start chiseling away at the big blob of ideas and finding the best ones, and then sort of systematically pursuing the best ones, and then choosing the very best, and then prototyping that, and then getting feedback, and then improving, etc.
Yeah. And when we look at design thinking and co-creation, right, this is very important. And when we look at traits that we designers kind of have to have, are like non-conformity, curiosity, and a willingness to kind of take risks. When we as designers are talking about this, it's quite normal, actually. It's a must to have these traits.
Yeah.
When we're talking with clients, in my own experience, this can be quite challenging to kind of like explain to them why these traits are very important, right? Like, what's your experience in this?
I think that most people, from a human point of view, are quite able to understand the boundaries of the system that they've put themselves into. And especially when they're confronted with a complicated challenge to address, are quite easily brought outside their own paradigm if you make this explicit. So also from a cultural point of view, if people don't have the conceptual elbow room to think beyond the system, we find it's relatively easy to bring them into a different zone of thinking and working. Sometimes we use the metaphor of the game. There's this mind game, or this little sort of problem-solving game with the 9 dots, and you have to connect the dots in 3 lines without lifting your pencil off the paper and without crossing the same dots twice. And And that's where the saying comes from, thinking outside the box, because you need to draw 2 extra dots to get the puzzle. If you draw those 2 extra dots, then you can solve the riddle. And thinking outside the box is a really sort of an expression that's used well and poorly many times, but it is the essence of trying to crack it, because it's basically an explanation of Einstein's observation that you can't solve any challenge if you use the same thinking that formulated or created the problem. So you do need to step outside the boundaries of the system to solve the problem inside the system. And so, yeah, I mean, many people, and I can imagine, especially in Japanese society, which as an outsider I understand is perhaps more formal than Dutch society. Also, I can imagine that working for a Japanese company is perhaps more hierarchical and more structured than Amsterdam, which does tend to be quite open and liberal and equalitarian. So maybe there's a different role to play for leadership in these times of a transition. But also, interestingly, I think that everybody accepts that leadership can come from anyone and not just the founders or people at the top of the hierarchy, or at least they need to accept this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at Neuromagic, this is one of our core values, right? Very flat hierarchy, and that leadership and also insights can come from anywhere. So we truly believe in that.
There's a really interesting point. Sorry to interrupt you there. Paul Polman, so the former CEO of Unilever, has got this great newsletter which is connected to the book Net Positive. And he had this interesting comment a while back. He said, traditionally, we look at organizations from the perspectives of top down and bottom up. But in this era, we need to look at leadership from the middle out, because when you're young, obviously you have lots of energy and ideas, but you don't have the maturity, perhaps, or the connections, or the leverage, or the momentum and the mandate to actually change stuff. And the same goes for people at the top. Actually, when you're a leader of a company in a serious any serious size, all you can really do is empower people or create room for people to explore within certain boundaries. And the real engine actually, or the real plane, is being flown by the cockpit in the middle. So there's an interesting way of looking at organizations from a change perspective, I thought.
Yeah, absolutely. He can be quite inspiring, right?
Yep.
Thank you for sharing that. So going back to the more hands-on co-creation, like where do you see with sustainability makes the most impact? So that where co-creation makes the most impact when you're talking about sustainability?
Okay, so that's a question that you can look at from various angles. I think that most fundamentally, if we look at sustainability or the transitions that our economy and society and planet need to go through, we see immediately the need to create a new paradigm or to reprogram existing systems, value chains, business models, all that lot. So that's quite a conceptual challenge as well as a societal challenge, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that requires quite holistic thinking. And referring back to the Einstein quote, you can't really solve that from the paradigm that you started with. And also, because of the complexity and the interrelatedness of many systems, so, the various players in an ecosystem, nobody can change anything on their own anymore, because nobody has the size or the mandate or the structure. Maybe like mega companies like Google and Shell have enough power to do stuff on their own. But the book's called Collaborate or Die, and not without reason, because we believe that you really need both the thinking from various perspectives, but also the mandate and the momentum from various perspectives to change stuff. So yeah, we need to create a new thinking and resonate with this collaboratively, so that as a group we can make a decision to set a new level playing field, or set different standards, or to require something, or to aspire to something collaboratively. That's one. And then if you look at transitions, what we need, so there's three basic elements what we need, right? We need really fresh new ideas and strategies. We need teams or groups of people working from a shared purpose. And then sometimes we need very specific coalitions to tackle a very specific part of a specific problem. And all of those can be achieved through co-creation, or perhaps require co-creation. So if you're looking at sustainability, or let's look at my jeans example for it as an instance. If you want, so we want to be more regenerative, right? Which means that you want to reuse fibers from old garments to be the source for new garments, rather than use virgin materials. That requires new standards. That requires new business partnerships. That requires a new narrative. That requires new networks. And that's just one challenge in one industry that hardly ever anybody thinks about. Can you imagine about the bigger stuff? So coming up with ideas together, coming up with interventions in systems. Most industries are changed by governmental legislation, but governments are strong but slow, right? So if you want to change stuff, you need to be able to move without waiting for government. So you need to create sort of an avant-garde of companies that sees benefit in collaborating and then going for it. So all of those things require co-creation, at least according to me. But obviously I look at the world through the lens of collaboration as a starting point.
Yeah. I think I'm quite sure that our philosophy is like we're on the same page on collaboration and co-creation. I mean, I think there's also a reason why,
you found me in Amsterdam. Yeah.
Yeah, like we're in Berlin, Amsterdam, and Tokyo at the moment, right? So is there a moment that you realized the importance of collaboration and co-creation? Like, is there a moment that you can look back upon and think, oh, this is when I realized the importance and the impact it can have to collaborate and co-create?
Well, so throughout my professional career, I sort of evolved into being more and more specialized and focused on co-creation. So that was more of a sort of evolution into the field. But again, as a person, a professional, but also a person. So basically, I'm a marketing professional, right? I come up with new stuff as a job. I transitioned from being in the denim industry to being in this strategy agency world. And I thought I'd left the denim world, but then for a number of reasons, I was sort of pulled back. And I was asking myself, hey, how might we here in Amsterdam save the planet? Now, how might we not save the planet, but make a part of the change that this huge denim industry in the world, it's $100 billion industry, right? Across the planet, totally globalized industry. How can we make impact? Literally. And so then in a burst of youthful enthusiasm, I thought, well, if I'm telling my clients they should use co-creation in these kinds of situations, why not go for it myself as well? And so we did. So in 2010, we pulled together a incredible mix of people for a co-creation workshop. And we, as we say in English, we ate our own dog food, right? So we used our own recipe to solve my personal ambition or my personal challenge or design question, and came up with the House of Denim Foundation, and then the Jeans School, and then all the denim initiatives that are going on in Amsterdam right now were conceived on that day. And so that was when I started, and along the way in the past 12 and a half years have personally experienced the power of co-creation or of collaborative innovation.
you.